My name is Amanda Mitchell. I'm 28, and until recently, I ran a successful online marketing business. For 6 years, I financially supported my entire family, paid their mortgage, bills, everything. Then last month, a fire destroyed my apartment and office. I lost everything. When I showed up at my parents' doorstep with nothing but a backpack of salvaged belongings, my own mother laughed in my face and said, "This isn't a shelter." That night, I made a decision that changed everything. Before I tell you what happened after I cut every penny, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you want more stories about setting boundaries with toxic family members. I grew up in Rochester, New York, in a household where money was always a problem, not because we didn't have it, but because my parents couldn't manage it. My father, Gary, now 52, has never held a job longer than 18 months. He'd get hired somewhere, start strong, then either quit over some perceived slight or get fired for missing too many days. What he never missed, though, was his weekly poker game with friends, which usually ended with him coming home cursing about his bad luck. My mother, Karen, 50, compensated for her unhappiness by shopping. She had 12 credit cards by the time I was in high school, most of them maxed out. Her closet was packed with clothes that still had tags on them, while she complained we couldn't afford my school supplies. "Amanda, you don't understand adult responsibilities," she'd say whenever I questioned their spending. By 16, I was working after school at the local grocery store while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. I understood responsibility better than they ever did. My younger brother Jason, now 26, followed in our father's footsteps. He dropped out of community college after one semester because entrepreneurs don't need degrees. His entrepreneurial ventures included a lawn care business, abandoned after he realized it required waking up early, an energy drink distribution scheme, which was actually an MLM that cost him $3,000, and a food truck that never made it past the planning stage, though it cost me $22,000. My sister Stephanie, 24, was my mother's protege. Beautiful and socially gifted, she learned early that crying to daddy usually resulted in getting whatever she wanted, despite our limited funds. When she didn't get her way, the silent treatment followed, sometimes for weeks. As we grew older, her demands escalated from toys to designer clothes to a lavish wedding that nearly bankrupted me. I was the anomaly in our family, the responsible one. I worked every summer and after school during the year. I applied for every scholarship I could find and managed to attend state university with minimal loans. I graduated with a business degree while working 3 jobs: barista in the morning, student assistant during the day, and waitress on weekends. The summer after graduation, I landed a marketing position at a local agency. I worked there for 2 years, living frugally and saving every penny while my colleagues bought new cars and took exotic vacations. At night and on weekends, I built my own client base, creating websites and managing social media for small businesses. By 24, I had enough clients to quit my day job and start my own marketing firm. Within 6 months, I was making more than both my parents combined. That's when the requests started. It began innocently enough. Mom needed help with the electric bill one month because Dad had been laid off again. Then Dad's car broke down and they couldn't afford repairs. I helped because that's what family does, right? The first year of my business, I probably gave them about $8,000 total, not a small amount, but manageable with my growing income. I felt good about being able to help my family. The second year, everything changed. Dad lost his job again, and they fell behind on their mortgage. Mom called me sobbing, saying they might lose the house I grew up in. "We've tried everything, Amanda. You're our only hope." I took over their $1,700 monthly mortgage payment, telling myself it was temporary. By year 3, temporary had become permanent. I was now paying their mortgage, utilities, and car insurance. When Jason came to me with his food truck idea, I couldn't say no. He seemed so passionate, so convinced this would be his big break. The $22,000 investment disappeared within 4 months, with nothing to show for it except a half-wrapped truck that sat in our parents' driveway until they sold it for scrap. Year 4 brought Stephanie's wedding. She'd gotten engaged to a nice enough guy who worked in sales, but couldn't afford the dream wedding she'd been planning since childhood. When Mom called asking if I could chip in, I asked for a budget. The number, $35,000, made me choke on my coffee. That's more than reasonable for a modest wedding these days, Mom insisted. I ended up paying for everything from the venue to the honeymoon in Bali. The 5th year, Dad needed emergency gallbladder surgery. While he had basic insurance through his newest job, the deductible was high. I covered the $8,500 medical bills, plus bought him a used car when his finally died. Mom's shopping addiction worsened, and I found myself paying off her credit cards to keep their credit score from tanking completely. By year 6, last year, I was fully supporting my entire family. My parents hadn't paid their own mortgage in 4 years. I covered all their utilities. I paid for Jason's rent after his 3rd roommate kicked him out for not contributing. I helped Stephanie with her car payment when she decided she needed a brand new SUV despite having no children. All told, I was spending over $6,000 a month on my family while trying to grow my business. The gratitude that had been present during that first year had long since vanished. My help wasn't appreciated, it was expected. When I couldn't immediately transfer money for Stephanie's emergency, a sale at Nordstrom, she wouldn't speak to me for days. When I suggested Dad look into a more stable job, Mom accused me of calling him a failure. After everything we've done for you became her constant refrain, though I couldn't recall exactly what they'd done besides provide the legally required minimum when I was a child. I missed vacations with friends because someone always needed something. I postponed buying my own home because my money was tied up in everyone else's lives. I worked 60-hour weeks to maintain the income needed to support 5 adults. Deep down, I knew this wasn't right. But every time I considered cutting back, the guilt would overwhelm me. Family takes care of family, Mom would say. And I believed her, even though the care only seemed to flow in one direction. The smoke alarm woke me at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday in April. At first, I thought it was my phone alarm malfunctioning, but the piercing sound was too urgent, too insistent. When I opened my bedroom door, thick black smoke immediately forced me to drop to my knees. My apartment was on the 3rd floor of a converted Victorian house. I'd chosen it specifically because the spacious front room made a perfect home office. I loved that old building with its ornate woodwork and bay windows. Now those same vintage features were turning it into a tinderbox. I crawled to the bathroom, soaked a towel in water, and covered my face. Through watering eyes, I could see orange flames flickering beneath the door that led to the hallway. The fire hadn't started in my unit. I later learned it began in my downstairs neighbor's kitchen when she fell asleep with oil heating on the stove, but it was spreading fast. My emergency exit was the fire escape outside my bedroom window. I grabbed my laptop bag, stuffed it with my passport, birth certificate, and the external hard drive where I backed up client files. I shoved my phone and charger in my pocket, slipped on the shoes beside my bed, and climbed out onto the metal landing. The night air was cool against my smoke-heated skin. From the fire escape, I watched in horror as flames engulfed the beautiful old building. Neighbors gathered on the lawn below, some crying, others filming with their phones. Fire trucks arrived with screaming sirens, but it was already clear they couldn't save the structure, only prevent the fire from spreading to neighboring buildings. A firefighter helped me down the last flight of stairs, asking if I was hurt. Besides some minor smoke inhalation and the shock pulsing through my body, I was physically fine. Emotionally was another story. I stood on the sidewalk for hours, wrapped in a Red Cross blanket, watching my home and office burn to nothing. By morning, all that remained was a charred skeleton of blackened wood and collapsed floors. The firefighters confirmed what I already knew. Everything inside was destroyed. My furniture, clothes, family photos, business equipment, paper files, all gone. The first blow came when I contacted my insurance company. I had renter's insurance, but it turned out the building owner had let his policy lapse 3 months earlier. My coverage was minimal without the landlord's policy to supplement it. The claims adjuster estimated it would take weeks, possibly months, to process even the limited payment I might receive. For the first 3 nights, I stayed at a hotel that cost $179 per night, an expense I couldn't sustain for long. My business operated primarily from my home office, and without my equipment and files, I couldn't work. While most of my client information was backed up online, my computer, professional camera, lighting equipment, and other tools were gone. I'd always been careful with money, but supporting my family had drained my savings. The emergency fund I once had was depleted after paying for Dad's car last year. I had about $3,200 in my checking account, enough for maybe 2 weeks of hotel stays and basic necessities, but not enough to put a deposit on a new apartment while maintaining my family's financial needs. My friends Megan and Tyler offered their couch for a couple of nights, but they lived in a tiny 1-bedroom apartment with barely enough room for themselves. I gratefully accepted, not wanting to impose for longer than absolutely necessary. By day 5 after the fire, I was running out of options. I'd applied for emergency assistance, but without dependent children, I wasn't high on the priority list. I'd called every affordable apartment in the area, but without proof of current employment. My business cards and marketing materials had burned. Landlords were hesitant. That's when I made the decision that seemed so obvious, I was almost embarrassed I hadn't thought of it immediately. After 6 years of supporting my family, paying their mortgage, utilities, car payments, and more, surely they would help me for a few weeks until I got back on my feet. I called my mother first, explaining the situation in detail. Her response was lukewarm at best. "Oh, that's terrible, honey. I'm so sorry to hear that." The sympathy in her voice didn't match her words. "You know, our spare room is being used for storage right now. And your father's been feeling under the weather. It's not really a good time." I was stunned. Not a good time? I'd been sending the money when it wasn't a good time for me for 6 years. But I held my tongue, thinking perhaps it was just the shock of the news. Maybe if I asked in person, explained how desperate my situation was, they'd understand. "I thought I might come over tonight," I said carefully, "just to talk about options." "Sure, honey. We'll be home." I borrowed Megan's car and drove the 30 minutes to my parents' suburban home, the home whose mortgage I'd been paying for 4 years. The spring evening was pleasant, with late-day sunlight warming the dashboard. I rehearsed what I would say, how I would explain that this was temporary, that I just needed a place to stay for a few weeks while I sorted things out. I wasn't asking for money, just a roof over my head, the roof I'd been paying for. As I pulled into their driveway, I felt a mix of relief and apprehension. The house looked the same as always, neatly trimmed lawn, maintained by a service I paid for, fresh paint from last summer, also my expense, and Mom's flower beds blooming with spring bulbs. My parents' 2 cars sat in the driveway, Dad's 2-year-old Ford, bought with my money, and Mom's SUV, monthly payments courtesy of me. I took a deep breath and got out of the car, clutching the backpack that contained everything I now owned in the world. Mom opened the door before I could knock, her eyes widening at my appearance. I hadn't had access to most of my clothes or makeup since the fire, and had been rotating between 2 t-shirts borrowed from Megan. My hair smelled faintly of smoke despite multiple washings. "Amanda, you look tired." She hesitated before stepping aside to let me in. The house was immaculate as always. Fresh flowers sat on the entryway table, and I could smell something baking in the kitchen. The contrast between the comfort of this home and my current situation made my throat tighten. "Is Dad here?" I asked, following her to the kitchen. "In the living room, watching his shows." She gestured vaguely before opening the refrigerator. "Have you eaten? I could make you a sandwich." "I'm not hungry, thanks." In truth, I hadn't eaten since morning, but food was the last thing on my mind. Dad barely looked up when I entered the living room. He was sprawled in his recliner. The one I'd bought him for Christmas last year, watching a baseball game on the large flat-screen TV that had been my gift after his promotion, which he'd lost 3 months later. "Hey, Dad." "Hey, kiddo." His eyes flicked to me briefly before returning to the game. "Heard about the fire. Tough break. Tough break." Like I'd lost a casual bet, not everything I owned. I sat on the couch and waited for Mom to join us. When she did, carrying a glass of wine for herself, but nothing for me, I launched into my carefully prepared speech. "As you know, I lost everything in the fire. My insurance is giving me problems, and it's going to be a while before I can get back on my feet." I took a deep breath. I was hoping I could stay here for a few weeks while I sort things out. Just until I can find a new apartment and replace my work equipment. The silence that followed seemed to stretch for minutes, though it was probably only seconds. Mom took a sip of her wine, her expression shifting from feigned concern to obvious annoyance. "Amanda, you know we love you, but this just isn't a good time. Your father hasn't been feeling well, and we've converted the guest room into a storage space." "I could sleep on the couch," I said, desperation creeping into my voice. "Or clear out some of the storage. I don't need much space." "It's not just that," Mom continued, not meeting my eyes. "You know how your father values his routine. Having someone else here would be disruptive." I stared at her, unable to process what I was hearing. They had a 4-bedroom house. Besides their master bedroom, there was the guest room, now storage, Stephanie's old room, preserved like a shrine though she'd been married for 2 years, and Jason's room, which he still used occasionally when between apartments. "Mom, I have nowhere else to go," I said, my voice cracking. "I've lost everything." That's when she did it, she laughed. A short, dismissive laugh that cut through me like a knife. "Don't be so dramatic, Amanda. This isn't a shelter. You've always been resourceful. I'm sure you'll figure something out." In that moment, something broke inside me. 6 years of supporting them, of putting their needs before mine, of being the responsible one, and this was how they repaid me. "Do you realize," I said, my voice unnaturally calm, "that I've been paying your mortgage for 4 years? That I pay for this house you're refusing to let me stay in?" Mom's expression hardened. "That's different. We're your parents. We raised you. I've given you over $250,000 in the past 6 years. That's what family does," she snapped. "Don't throw it in our face. We would have done the same for you if we could. But they could now. They absolutely could help me now, and they were choosing not to." Dad finally spoke up, still not looking away from the television. "Your mother said it's not a good time, Amanda. Don't make this difficult." Just then, the front door opened, and Jason walked in. My brother had his own key to the house I paid for, apparently. "What's going on?" he asked, looking between us. Mom quickly explained that I'd dropped by after having some trouble with my apartment, conveniently leaving out that said apartment had burned to the ground. "So she wants to stay here," Mom finished, "but I was explaining that we just don't have the space right now." Jason frowned. "In my room? No way. I've got all my gaming equipment set up, and I'm hosting a tournament this weekend. You don't even live here." I couldn't help but shout. "I stay here all the time," he shot back. "It's still my room." I stood up, shaking with rage and disbelief. "I have paid for everything for this family for 6 years. Everything. The mortgage on this house. The utilities. The lawn service. The car payments. Jason's rent when he got evicted. Stephanie's wedding. Dad's medical bills." I was crying now, tears streaming down my face. I lost everything in that fire. Everything. And you can't even offer me a couch to sleep on. Mom stood too, her face flushed with anger or embarrassment. I couldn't tell which. "That's enough, Amanda. If you only helped us so you could throw it in our faces later, then maybe you should stop." "Maybe I should," I whispered. As if on cue, Mom's phone rang. She glanced at it, then answered. Hi, Stephanie. Yes, she's here. A pause. Actually, I think she's just leaving. I could hear my sister's voice on the other end, asking questions. Mom handed me the phone. She wants to talk to you. With trembling hands, I took the phone. Hello. Amanda, Mom texted me about the fire. I'm so sorry. Stephanie's voice held more genuine sympathy than either of our parents had shown. For a brief moment, I felt a surge of hope. Thanks, Steph. It's been rough. I was asking Mom and Dad if I could stay here for a bit while I figure things out. Oh! Her tone changed immediately. Well, I'd offer our place, but you know how small it is. And Ryan's mother is visiting next week. A pause. I could lend you some clothes, though? Maybe send a gift card for takeout. The last thread of hope snapped. Don't worry about it, I said flatly and handed the phone back to Mom without saying goodbye. I grabbed my backpack from where I'd set it by the couch. No one spoke as I walked to the front door. No one tried to stop me. As I opened the door, rain had started falling, a perfect cinematic touch to the worst day of my life. Amanda, Mom called as I stepped outside. I turned, thinking perhaps she'd had a change of heart. Instead, she said, "Will you still be sending the mortgage payment on the 1st? We have that property tax bill coming up." I didn't answer. I couldn't. I simply turned and walked to my borrowed car, the rain soaking through my thin t-shirt. In the car, I sat with the engine off, staring at the house through the rain-streaked windshield. 6 years of support, of sacrificing my own dreams to keep them comfortable, and they couldn't offer me a couch for a few nights. The weight of that rejection crushed down on me until I could barely breathe. I put my head on the steering wheel and sobbed, deep, painful sobs that came from somewhere primal inside me. In that moment, parked outside the house I'd been paying for, I realized a devastating truth. To my family, I wasn't a daughter or a sister. I was an ATM. And ATMs don't need shelter. I spent that night in Megan's car, parked behind a 24-hour Walmart. I couldn't face going back to her apartment and explaining what had happened. The humiliation was too raw, too fresh. I reclined the driver's seat as far as it would go and tried to sleep, but my mind kept replaying my mother's laugh, my father's indifference, my siblings' selfishness. As the night stretched on, memories flooded back. The Christmas I'd worked through to finish a major client project, transferring money to my parents just in time for them to buy presents from Santa for Jason and Stephanie. The vacation to Bermuda I'd canceled because Dad needed dental work not covered by insurance. The countless weekends I'd spent helping Mom with household projects while my friends posted photos of their adventures on social media. Around 3 a.m., I opened the Notes app on my phone and began calculating. Mortgage payments for 4 years, $81,600. Utilities for 6 years, approximately $18,000. Car payments for both parents over 3 years, $32,400. Jason's failed business ventures, $38,000. Stephanie's wedding and subsequent emergencies, $47,000. Various medical bills, credit card payments, insurance premiums, and miscellaneous expenses, roughly $63,000. The total stared back at me from my phone screen, $280,000. Over $250,000 gone. Not invested in my future, not saved for a home of my own, not used to grow my business to the next level, just gone, poured into the bottomless pit of my family's needs and wants. And what had I gotten in return? Not even a couch to sleep on when I had nothing. As dawn broke, I drove to a 24-hour diner. I was exhausted, hungry, and desperately needed coffee. The place was nearly empty, just a few truckers at the counter and an elderly couple in a corner booth. I slid into a booth by the window and ordered coffee and pancakes from a waitress whose name tag read Rebecca. When she brought my food, she paused, studying my face. Rough night. I must have looked terrible, unwashed, red-eyed, still wearing the same clothes. My apartment burned down yesterday, I said, surprising myself with the honesty. I lost everything. Oh honey, I'm so sorry. Her sympathy seemed genuine, unlike my mother's performance. Do you have somewhere to stay? I shook my head, tears threatening again. I asked my family, but they said no. After everything I've done for them. Rebecca slid into the booth across from me. Family can be the worst sometimes. My brother did the same to me years ago. I'd been sending him money for years, then when I needed help, suddenly he was too busy. She patted my hand. But you know what? Best thing that ever happened to me. Made me realize I needed to put myself first for once. She gave me a few minutes of kindness before other customers needed her attention. It wasn't much, but that small interaction with a stranger who showed more compassion than my own family was the final push I needed. I paid my bill, leaving Rebecca a tip larger than I could really afford, and drove to the nearest extended stay motel. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and safe. I used my nearly maxed out credit card to book a room for 2 weeks. It would take most of my available credit, but it would give me a base of operations to figure out my next steps. In the small motel room with its generic artwork and polyester bedspread, I opened my laptop and created a spreadsheet. In one column, I listed every financial connection I had with my family. Parents' mortgage, automatic payment from my account on the 1st. Parents' utilities, automatic payments on various dates. Dad's car payment, automatic payment on the 15th. Mom's credit card minimum payments, automatic payment on the 22nd. Jason's rent, direct transfer on the 1st. Stephanie's car insurance, automatic payment on the 10th. In the next column, I listed steps to sever each connection. Call mortgage company to stop automatic payment. Cancel utility automatic payments. Contact auto loan company to remove my name. Cancel automatic payments to credit cards. Stop all bank transfers. Document everything for legal protection. The plan was taking shape, but I needed to understand my legal obligations. Some quick research showed that since I wasn't a co-signer on the mortgage, just making payments, I had no legal responsibility to continue. The same was true for the utilities and Jason's rent. For accounts where I was an authorized payer, but not the primary account holder, I could simply remove my payment information. I was both exhausted and energized. The weight of my family's expectations had been crushing me for years, but now, ironically, having nothing meant I had nothing left to lose. I drafted an email to my family. I wrote and rewrote it several times, trying to find the right balance between explanation and boundary setting. I didn't want to be cruel, despite everything. These were still the people I'd loved my whole life, but I needed to be clear and firm. The final version read, Mom, Dad, Jason, and Stephanie. After yesterday's conversation, I've come to a decision that's been a long time coming. Effective immediately, I will no longer be providing financial support to any of you. Over the past 6 years, I have given this family over $280,000. I have paid for everything from the mortgage to utilities to car payments to Jason's failed businesses to Stephanie's wedding. I have sacrificed my own financial security and future to keep you all comfortable. Yesterday, when I came to you having lost everything in a fire, you couldn't offer me even temporary shelter in the home I've been paying for. That showed me with perfect clarity where I stand in this family. I've already contacted the mortgage company, utility companies, and other services to remove my payment information. I've documented all past payments for my records. This isn't about revenge. It's about finally recognizing that this relationship has been entirely one-sided. I need to put myself first now, something I should have done years ago. Please do not contact me asking for money. My decision is final. Amanda. I didn't send it right away. Despite my resolve, this was a massive step. I closed my laptop and lay down on the motel bed, physically and emotionally drained. For the first time since the fire, I fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. When I woke hours later, the room was dark except for the glow of my phone showing multiple missed calls from my mother. I didn't listen to the voicemails or read the texts. Instead, I reopened my laptop, reread my email, and before I could second-guess myself, hit send. Then I blocked all their numbers on my phone. The strangest feeling washed over me, not satisfaction or vindication, but relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. I had nothing, but somehow I felt lighter than I had in years. I woke the next morning with a clear head and a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The weight that had been pressing down on me, the constant worry about my family's finances, the strain of working endless hours to support 5 adults, was lifted. I still had enormous challenges ahead, rebuilding my business, finding permanent housing, replacing everything I'd lost. But for the first time in a long time, the only person I needed to worry about was myself. My first stop was the bank. I'd been using the same regional bank since college, and over the years had added my parents as joint account holders on my main checking account in case of emergency. This had evolved into them having complete access to withdraw funds whenever they wanted, which they did, frequently, for emergencies that ranged from actual car repairs to concert tickets. Jessica, the bank manager, recognized me immediately. "Amanda, I heard about the fire. I'm so sorry." I thanked her and explained that I needed to make some changes to my accounts. I'd like to close all my current accounts and open new ones today, if possible. She looked surprised. "All of them? May I ask why?" I hesitated, embarrassed to admit how I'd allowed myself to be taken advantage of for so long. But Jessica had seen the patterns in my accounts, the large withdrawals, the constant transfers to my family members. "My family situation has changed," I said carefully. "I need to separate my finances completely." Understanding dawned in her eyes. "I see. We can definitely help with that." For the next hour, Jessica helped me close my existing accounts and open new ones with enhanced security features. She made sure my direct deposits from clients would transfer to the new accounts and helped me order new debit and credit cards. "Is there anything else we can do to help?" she asked as we finished the paperwork. "Actually, yes. Can you print statements showing all the transfers I've made to these accounts over the past 6 years?" I showed her the list of my family members' account numbers. "I need documentation of everything I've paid." Jessica nodded. "For legal purposes?" "Just in case," I replied. My next stop was the mortgage company. I'd been making payments on my parents' house through automatic withdrawals from my account. The customer service representative initially seemed confused by my request. "You want to remove the automatic payment, but you're not the mortgage holder?" "That's correct. I've been making payments on behalf of my parents, but I'll no longer be doing so." "I see. Are they aware of this change?" "They will be," I said firmly. "I'm not responsible for their mortgage. I've been helping voluntarily, and that help is ending." After verifying my identity as the payment source, they processed my request. I asked for, and received, a statement showing all payments made from my account over the past 4 years, totaling $81,600. Throughout the day, I methodically worked through my list. I called each utility company, car loan provider, and credit card company. I removed my payment information from every account. Some were easy. I simply canceled the automatic payments. Others required more explanation, but none could force me to continue paying for accounts that weren't in my name. One by one, I severed the financial ties that had bound me to my family's endless needs. With each call, each form, each confirmation email, I felt more in control of my own life. By late afternoon, I'd worked through most of my list. My phone had been buzzing constantly. My family had discovered they couldn't access my bank accounts and were trying to reach me. I'd unblocked their numbers to document the harassment, but wasn't answering calls or responding to messages. The most difficult call was to the student loan company where I was a co-signer on Jason's loans he'd stopped paying on years ago, leaving me to cover the payments to protect my credit score. I couldn't simply remove myself as a co-signer, but I did set up a minimum payment plan that would keep the account from defaulting while I explored legal options for removing my name entirely. After working through my financial to-do list, I made one final call to a legal aid service that offered free consultations. I explained my situation to the attorney who took my call, asking if there was anything else I needed to do to protect myself. "You've done most of the right things already," she assured me. The documentation of past payments was especially smart. Since you weren't contractually obligated to make these payments, with the exception of the student loan you co-signed, you have no legal responsibility to continue. What if they claim I promised to keep paying? Or that the money was a loan they intended to repay? Without written agreements, those would be difficult claims to prove. The pattern of payments over 6 years with no repayment suggests these were gifts, not loans. But if you're concerned, send a clear written statement that you will no longer be providing financial support. Actually, can you email them something to that effect? I already did last night. Perfect. Save that email and any responses. If they make any threats or continue to harass you, you might consider a cease and desist letter, but let's hope it doesn't come to that. After thanking her for her time, I sent one final email to each family member individually, with screenshots of bank statements showing the total amounts I'd given them over the years. I didn't include any emotional language, just facts and figures. To each, I attached a PDF with a detailed accounting of exactly what I'd paid for and when. The totals were staggering when laid out chronologically. To my mother, total support provided, $124,350. Mortgage payments, $81,600. Utility payments, $12,480. Credit card payments, $19,270. Miscellaneous expenses, $11,000. To my father, total support provided, $62,800. Car payments, $18,400. Medical bills, $21,400. Personal loans, $23,000. To Jason, total support provided, $56,900. Food truck business, $22,000. Rent payments, $19,200. Student loan payments, $8,700. Miscellaneous expenses, $7,000. To Stephanie, total support provided, $56,950. Wedding expenses, $35,000. Car-related expenses, $14,750. Personal loans, $7,200. I ended each email with the same message. This is a record of the financial support I have provided. I am sending this as documentation only, not to request repayment. As stated in my previous email, I will no longer be providing financial assistance of any kind. Please respect this boundary. Then I set up an auto-reply on my email and a similar automatic text response. I am currently unavailable as I rebuild after losing my home and business in a fire. If this is regarding a past financial arrangement, please note that I am no longer providing financial support. If this is a client or business contact, please leave a detailed message and I will respond as soon as possible. That evening, I sat in my motel room feeling a strange mix of emotions, grief for the relationships I'd thought I had, anger at being used for so long, anxiety about my uncertain future, but underlying it all, a profound sense of liberation. I had less than $1,000 in my new bank account, a nearly maxed-out credit card, and a motel room booked for 13 more days. But for the first time in years, every dollar I earned going forward would be mine to use as I chose. I ordered a pizza, took a long shower, and slept better than I had since before the fire. The constant knot of stress that had lived between my shoulder blades for years had finally begun to loosen. By the time I woke up the next morning, I had 52 missed calls. 23 were from my mother. The timestamps showed she'd started calling at 7:03 a.m. and continued every 15 to 20 minutes until midnight. Her early voicemails were angry. "Amanda, what do you think you're doing? Call me back immediately." I can't believe you closed the accounts without telling us. We have bills due. By midday, her tone had shifted to confused indignation. I don't understand why you're doing this. After everything we've done for you. Your father is very upset. Is this really how you want to treat your family? The evening messages turned tearful and manipulative. Please, Amanda. We need you. We can't make the mortgage payment without you. What are we supposed to do? End up homeless? Is that what you want? My father had called 8 times, but left only 2 voicemails. The first was just background noise, as if he'd accidentally triggered the recording. The second was brief and threatening. You need to fix this, Amanda. Now. Jason had called 12 times, his messages growing increasingly aggressive. What the hell, Amanda? Mom's freaking out. I was counting on that money for rent. My landlord's going to evict me. You're really going to screw over your own family? What kind of person does that? His final message was slurred, obviously drunk. You think you're better than us? You're nothing. Nothing. Stephanie had called 9 times. Her first message was actually sympathetic. Amanda, I'm sorry about what happened at Mom and Dad's. That wasn't right. Call me, okay? But when I didn't respond, her subsequent messages quickly devolved. I know you're upset, but cutting everyone off is extreme. We need to talk about this. My car payment is due next week. I'm going to be late if you don't help. Fine. Be that way. I always knew you were jealous of me. The text messages followed a similar pattern. Mom. The mortgage company called. Payment didn't go through. Fix this now. Dad, your mother is in tears. Hope you're happy. Jason. Need $800 for rent by tomorrow or I'm evicted. Stephanie. My credit score will be ruined if you don't make that car payment. Mom again. I've always been there for you. How can you do this to us? The messages continued throughout the day, ranging from guilt trips to outright threats to desperate pleas. I read them all but responded to none. Each message only confirmed what I already knew. They didn't care about me, only what I could provide for them. By the afternoon, the tone of the messages began to shift. Reality was setting in. Mom, maybe we can work something out. You could pay just the mortgage and we'll handle the rest. Dad, your mother says I should apologize. So I'm sorry you felt unwelcome. Jason, look, I was drunk last night. Didn't mean what I said. But seriously, I need help with rent. Stephanie, I talked to Mom. She was wrong not to let you stay. You can stay with Ryan and me if you still need to. Too little, too late. Their sudden concern for my welfare was transparently self-serving. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about their comfortable lives crumbling without my financial support. Meanwhile, I had my own problems to solve. I needed to rebuild my business from scratch. Most of my clients had been understanding about the fire, but I needed to get back to work as soon as possible. I used some of my remaining cash to buy a basic laptop, nothing fancy, just enough to handle design software and video calls. The public library became my office. I spent hours there each day, reaching out to clients, explaining my situation, and assuring them I could still meet their needs despite my personal setbacks. Some were sympathetic and patient. Others needed immediate work and couldn't wait. I lost 3 clients that first week, but managed to keep the rest. During one of my library sessions, I met Diana, the owner of a local print shop. She overheard me on a client call explaining that I was working from the library after losing my home office in a fire. I couldn't help overhearing, she said when I ended the call. I have a small office in the back of my shop that I'm not using. It has internet and a desk. You're welcome to use it until you get back on your feet. I was stunned by the kindness from a complete stranger. I couldn't impose like that. It's sitting empty anyway, she insisted. And I could use some help with my website when you have time. Maybe we could trade. That same day, through Diana, I met Rachel, a landlord who owned several properties in the area. When she heard my story, the real story, not the edited version I gave most people, she offered me a small 1-bedroom apartment at below market rent. It needs painting and some minor repairs, she explained. If you're willing to do the work yourself, I'll knock $200 off the monthly rent and waive the security deposit. The apartment was tiny and dated, with faded wallpaper and worn carpeting, but it was clean and structurally sound. The day I signed the lease, Diana showed up with pizza and a housewarming gift, a second-hand desk she'd had in storage. For your new home office, she said with a smile. Slowly, I began to rebuild. I spent evenings painting the apartment and weekdays working from Diana's back office. I found a second-hand couch on Facebook Marketplace and bought dishes from the dollar store. It wasn't much, but it was mine and no one could take it away from me. As the weeks passed, the calls and messages from my family gradually decreased. They'd realized I wasn't going to change my mind. Mom still called every few days, but her messages had become resigned rather than demanding. We had to take out a loan to cover the mortgage, she reported, clearly expecting me to feel guilty. Your father had to get a second job at the hardware store. At his age, Jason got evicted. He's sleeping on our couch now. I listened to the messages, but continued not to respond. Each update only confirmed that they'd been capable of solving their own problems all along. They just hadn't wanted to. About a month after I cut them off, I was working at the print shop when Diana poked her head in. There's someone here asking for you. A woman. Says she's your mother. My heart raced. I don't want to see her. Diana nodded, understanding immediately. I'll tell her you're not here. No, I said, standing up. I'll tell her myself. My mother stood by the counter, looking out of place in her expensive clothes and perfectly styled hair. When she saw me, her expression brightened. Amanda, finally, you've been impossible to reach. I kept my voice calm and professional, aware of customers in the shop. I've been clear about my boundaries, Mom. I don't want to talk. Don't be ridiculous. We're family. We need to discuss this situation. She lowered her voice. Your father and I are struggling. The bank is threatening foreclosure. I'm sorry to hear that. You should talk to a financial advisor. Her eyes narrowed. Is that all you have to say? After everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? When I lost everything and needed a place to stay, you laughed in my face. That was a misunderstanding. I was stressed. You know how your father gets when his routine is disrupted. I shook my head. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a moment of clarity. For 6 years, I gave you everything, and when I needed the bare minimum in return, you showed me exactly where I stood. So that's it? You're punishing us because we couldn't accommodate you for a few days. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm taking care of myself for the first time in my adult life. You're all capable adults. Figure it out, just like I had to. Her face hardened. I never thought my own daughter would be so cold. So selfish. I almost laughed at the irony. Goodbye, Mom. Please don't come here again. As she stormed out, Diana approached with a supportive smile. You okay? I took a deep breath, surprised to find I actually was. Yeah, I really am. The confrontation with my mother was the last direct contact I had with my family. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard that my parents had indeed taken out a home equity loan to cover their expenses. Jason had found a job at a call center, and Stephanie and her husband had downsized to a smaller apartment. They were managing, just as they could have all along if they hadn't had me to rely on. As for me, I was rebuilding too. My insurance finally paid out a modest settlement for the fire. It wasn't enough to replace everything I'd lost, but it gave me a financial cushion. My client base was growing again, and Diana had referred several local businesses to me for marketing work. The apartment I'd initially seen as temporary was starting to feel like home. I'd painted the walls sunny yellow, hung thrift store art, and filled a small bookshelf with new copies of my favorite books, the first non-essentials I'd allowed myself to buy. For the first time in years, I was living within my means and saving for my own future. No more luxury cars for my father. No more designer clothes for my sister. No more bailing out my brother's harebrained schemes. Just me, taking care of me. 6 months after the fire that had destroyed my old life, I realized I didn't want that life back anyway. The fire had burned away more than my possessions. It had incinerated the unhealthy dynamics that had been suffocating me for years. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to discover what you really need. It's been exactly 1 year since the fire that changed everything. As I sit in my apartment, my real home now, not just a temporary shelter, I barely recognize the person I was 12 months ago. The woman who sacrificed everything for people who gave nothing in return seems like a stranger to me now. My new place isn't fancy, but it's mine in a way my old apartment never was. I've painted each room a different color, bold choices I never would have made before. The living room is a warm terracotta, the bedroom a peaceful sage green, the small home office a cheerful yellow. Second-hand furniture that I've lovingly restored fills the space. It's eclectic and imperfect, but every item represents a choice I made for myself, not an obligation to someone else. After the fire, Diana's offer of office space evolved into a business partnership. We combined her print shop with my digital marketing services to create a full-service marketing agency for local businesses. We're small but growing steadily, with a client list that has doubled in the past 6 months. The insurance settlement finally came through, larger than I initially expected thanks to a diligent adjuster who fought for fair compensation. I used part of it to buy new equipment for the business and invested the rest, my first real savings for the future. Weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Laura have been instrumental in my healing process. What you experienced was financial abuse, she told me during our first session, giving a name to the dynamic I'd been trapped in for years. But they're my family, I protested. Isn't family supposed to help each other? Family support should be reciprocal, she explained gently. When it consistently flows in only one direction, that's exploitation, not family. Through therapy, I've come to understand the complex emotions that kept me locked in that unhealthy pattern for so long. The guilt instilled from childhood. The false responsibility I felt for my family's well-being. The way they manipulated my empathy and twisted my generosity into obligation. You didn't cause their problems, Dr. Laura reminded me often. And you cannot fix them. They're adults responsible for their own choices. It was a simple truth, but one I'd never fully understood until now. One of the most surprising developments in my recovery has been the formation of genuine friendships. Diana and Rachel became not just business partner and landlord, but true friends who expected nothing from me beyond mutual respect and occasional dinner companionship. I'd been so consumed with my family's needs for so long that I'd forgotten what balanced relationships felt like. Through Diana, I met others in the local business community, people who valued my skills and ideas, not just what I could give them. I joined a book club at the library and a weekend hiking group. Slowly, I built a circle of connections based on shared interests and authentic care rather than obligation and guilt. 6 months after I cut ties with my family, a letter arrived from my father. It was brief and awkwardly written. Amanda, I know I've never been the father you deserved. Your mother and I made many mistakes. We took advantage of your generosity and failed you when you needed us. The past months have been difficult, but necessary. We're learning to stand on our own feet again. Jason has kept his job for 4 months now, a new record. Stephanie and Ryan have moved to a smaller place and are expecting a baby in March. I'm not asking for money or forgiveness. Just wanted you to know we're okay, and I hope you are too. Dad. I read the letter several times, searching for the manipulation hidden between the lines, but found none. It wasn't a grand apology or a request to reconcile. Just a simple acknowledgement of reality and what sounded like genuine concern for my well-being. I decided not to respond, but I kept the letter. It felt like closing a chapter not with anger or resentment, but with quiet acceptance that some relationships cannot and should not be saved. Last month, at a regional marketing conference, I met Brian, the owner of a web development company in a neighboring town. We connected over shared business challenges and a mutual love of 90s alternative rock. After several professional meetings that gradually became less about work and more about getting to know each other, he asked me to dinner. On our third date, I told him everything about the fire, my family, the years of financial abuse, and my decision to cut ties. I expected judgment or at least discomfort, but he listened with genuine empathy. My college roommate went through something similar with his parents, Brian shared. It took him years to establish boundaries. I saw how hard it was, but also how necessary. What struck me most was Brian's respect for my decisions. He never suggested I should reconcile or forgive and forget. He understood that some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. As our relationship has developed, I've discovered what healthy support actually looks like. When I mentioned wanting to expand our agency's services, Brian offered to introduce me to potential clients, not by taking over or funding the expansion, but by making connections and sharing knowledge. When I had a minor car accident, he drove me to appointments and brought soup, but never made me feel indebted. It's a partnership of equals, not a one-way stream of sacrifice. The difference is profound. The 1-year anniversary of the fire seemed like the right time for reflection, so this morning I hiked to a scenic overlook outside town. Sitting on a boulder with the valley spread out below me, I thought about everything I'd lost and gained in the past year. I lost my apartment, my possessions, and my dysfunctional family relationships. I gained self-respect, genuine friendships, and a clearer understanding of my own worth. The material losses were difficult, but ultimately replaceable. The psychological gains were priceless. In the distance, I could see the town where my parents still lived in the house I'd paid for. I felt no urge to drive there, no pull of guilt or obligation. That chapter was closed. My phone buzzed with a text from Brian. Hope the hike is giving you the perspective you wanted. Dinner later. I smiled and replied yes before tucking the phone away and turning my attention back to the view. The sky was impossibly blue, the valley lush with summer growth. Everything was exactly as it should be. I've learned that family isn't defined by blood or obligation. Family consists of the people who support you when you're in need, not because they expect repayment, but because they value you as a person. By that definition, I've built a truer family in the past year than I had in the 28 years before. The fire destroyed my home, but illuminated a truth I needed to see. Sometimes losing everything is how you find what truly matters. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took advantage of your generosity? Or have you lost something important only to realize it was actually holding you back? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more about my journey toward building a healthier, happier life on my own terms. Thank you for listening, and remember, you deserve relationships that lift you up, not drain you dry.